We're going to write a program that adds up all of the odd numbers from 1 to whatever number the user has entered. So in order to do this, first we've got to be able to count all of the numbers from 1 right up to the number the user's entered. Now, if you study a little bit of mathematics, you'll know that you can solve this problem with a simple formula. It's called the arithmetic series. However, the point of this is to practice using loops. So I'm going to show you how to add up all of these numbers by using a while loop. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start out by asking the user what number. So n is equal to input, enter a number. And then I'm going to convert n into an integer so that arithmetic may be done with it. Then I'm going to create a counter and make my counter equal to 0. And then while my counter is less than or equal to n, I'm going to print the value of my counter just to verify what it is that I have. Let me start out at 1. So now we're going to count up from 1. And each time through this loop, I'm going to add 1 to it. So I'm going to make counter equal to itself plus 1. So if I was to enter the number 5, it's going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what's happening here? I've made a counter. And I started off by giving that counter a value of 1. Now, n was entered by the user, and in this particular case, it was given a value of 5. Now, every time through this loop, so if you write while, the code after the word while that's indented will be repeated while this condition is true. So while the counter is less than or equal to n, it's going to keep running these 2 lines of code. Now, counter is equal to 1, and so assuming n was a value greater than 1, so in this case, or greater than or equal to 1, in this case it was equal to 5, then as long as our counter is less than or equal to 5, this code will repeat. The first thing it does is it prints the value, and then it adds 1 to its own value. So as that loop goes, counter takes on the values 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now what do we want to do? We want to add up all of the values that are odd. Write a program that'll ask the user to enter a whole number greater than 1, and then add up all of the odd numbers from 1 to that number. Okay, let's start off just by adding up all of the numbers. So I'm going to add the odd and the even numbers in there to start, and then we'll change it so it's only adding the odd numbers. Okay, so counter is going to have the values, let's say they enter a 5. Counter is going to have the values 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now I want to add all those together. So I'm going to call that my total. And my total starts off as 0. But every time through my loop, my total is going to be equal to itself plus the counter. And then at the very end, I'm going to print my total. So total is, let's call that total. Okay, so what is this doing? Okay, I've got a total, and my total started out as a 0. And then after going through that loop of code once, its counter's equal to 1, and total's equal to counter, so total's 1. When I go through that loop a second time, we've added 1 to counter, so counter is now 2, and total is going to be equal to itself, which is 1 plus 2, so total is going to be 3. We go through that loop again, counter is now 3. Total is total plus counter, 3 plus 3 is 6. We go through our loop again, and counter is now at 4, 4 plus 6 is 10. We go through that loop one more time, our counter is 5, total is 10 plus 5, so total is going to end up being 15. Because when we add the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 together, we get 15. So let's just give that a try and verify that that works. So our number is 5. And when we add the numbers, we're getting 20. Huh. So why is that? I'm printing the counter, and then I'm adding it up. Yeah, that's the mistake. You see? Watch here. Let me move that over. Now we'll get a better picture of what's going on here. Our counter starts at 1. We add to it, so it has a value of 2, and 2 is the first number that's added in. See, we can find our mistake and we can fix it here. So let's say I entered a 5. Our numbers are actually 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6, and they total up to 20. Here's why. I made the counter equal to 1, and then I instantly added a 1 to the counter. So let's start out with our counter equal to 0. So when we add 1, it's going to have a value of 1. Now if I enter a 5, it's going to go all the way up to 6, because it's when it hits a value of 6, it no longer does another line of code. So let me get rid of that equal sign. Okay, so now we've got, we'll enter the number 5, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it totals up to 15. Now let's say I want it to be every odd number. I'm going to put an if statement in here. I'm only going to add to my total if my counter value is odd. Now, if a number is odd, then when you divide it by 2, you get a remainder of 1. So remember that percent sign, it's called the modulus, is the remainder when this number is divided by that number. So when this number is divided by 2, if it gives me a remainder of 1, I'm going to add to my total. So let's give this a try here. And the number entered is a 5. Our total is 9, because 1 plus 3 is 4 plus 5 is 9. When we add up all of the odd numbers from 1 to 5, we get a total of 9. Let's see if this works for another number of numbers here. So let's say it's 12. We add up all the odd numbers from 1 to 12, and we get a 36. You can verify for yourself that 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7 plus 9 plus 11 will give you 36. So let me just sort of recap here by commenting. This is take number from user. So user is the person running the program. Okay, and then we convert it. Convert number to integer. See, Python won't do any math to it unless it's either an integer or a float. When someone types something in, it goes in as a string, which is like a string of characters. And then when you go to add, it's going to concatenate them. So by concatenate, it'll say 1 plus 2 is 1, 2. And you know 1 plus 2 is not 12, but when you just add strings, it just sticks them together. If you want it to do the actual arithmetic, you got to convert it to an integer or a float. So now this will hold numbers. 1 to whatever n is. And this will be the added total. Now I've got a counter. Sorry, I've got a while statement. So what this means is repeat the following. Repeat the following while, that's what while means, the counter is less than n. So a person's entered a number, and as long as our counter is less than the number they've entered, it's going to repeat the following. And by the following, I mean the following code that is indented. So the loop starts here, and the last line of code in the loop is here. Python identifies the block of code by the indentation. And so this line here, the first line that's not indented, is going to run after the loop. So here we add 1 to the counter each time we're in the loop. Add 1 to counter each time in the loop. Then we check if counter is odd. So if the value of our counter is an odd number, if it's odd, add it to total. So it's only the odd numbers that we're totaling. We're printing it, not for any good reason, and then at the very end, we're printing our final answer. So let's just run that one more time. And I'm going to put in the value 3. So all the odd numbers from 1 to 3 are 1 and 3, and that should give us a 4. The total is 4. And then let's clarify it. The total of odd values is 4. Okay, so let's just run that one last time. Say that's a 5, and the total of odd values is 9. 1 plus 3 plus 5 is equal to 9.